Once upon a time, there was a girl who grew up on Disney movies. She loved the images, the stories, the music. Every day, she imagined herself as being a character in them, sang all the songs, acted out all the dialogue. And one day, many years later, and in a different continent, this girl entered a singer-songwriter contest and became a recording artist at 16. She experienced so much and was so grateful for those experiences, but always wondered if there was something else that was missing. She also found moments in the public eye confusing and unhappy at times. And because of that, she decided to always aim to not be too attached, a little wild, and do things her way. It was a way to protect herself and also to find more meaning. And because of that, she was able to try and go down unexpected paths, drastically switch careers in a different country, and also stay sane. Until finally, she realized that the unconventional path and all the experiences that she'd accumulated would help her to do what she loved most, which was telling stories across a variety of different mediums. And since that day, she's been building a creative studio, a company that produces and creates original work across music, animation, books, audio, and that's until today, and we will see where I go next.
Welcome to A Life Worth Working, a podcast about how we get to the soul of work. We're your hosts, Michelle Weise and Dana Allen Walsh. I'm an education and workforce strategist, and Dana is a senior pastor of a progressive church.
And as always, we love hearing your comments, questions, and thoughts. So please know you can email us anytime at hello@alifeworthworking.com. And make sure you subscribe to our show and share it with your friends and loved ones who may be searching for more meaning in their work lives.
In this episode, we chat with Soeun Lee, who is a Korean pop star who recorded 4 studio albums over a 9-year period. Soeun started her singer-songwriter career at the age of 16. And while she was working a grueling schedule as a pop star, Soeun somehow navigated her way through high school and college and even managed to study for her LSAT. After she graduated from Northwestern Law School, she became a practicing lawyer and is now a studio producer. Talk about a spaghetti pathway.
Let's listen to her story.
I would love to hear more about, because I know a lot of people want to kind of hear about your former pop star life, because it's so interesting too that would probably be a lot of people's dreams, right? If they just kind of looked at it from the outside. But obviously it wasn't for you. So would love to kind of hear more details. You said you started when you were 16, but kind of take us back to what that experience was like.
Sure. So I lived here in the States in my elementary years. My dad was doing a PhD, the quintessential story. And then we went back to Korea. And I was a little lost, I have to say, because, I was a teenager at the same time. I was in my country, but it was a new experience since I'd, been away for so long. And I started feeling really alone and confused, as teenagers often do. But I found an outlet through music, and I'd always loved music. I played instruments since I was a kid. I'd always wanted to be famous. I know I said that when people would ask me when I was 5 or 6 what I wanted to be growing up, I said I wanted to be famous. And it's so superficial, and I don't think I even knew what it meant. I didn't know what it meant, but I just thought, I want to be famous. I want to be somebody that people know. And I guess that was kind of in me throughout my life. And then when I went back to Korea and I was going through puberty and it was kind of a lonely time, I started writing songs as an outlet to just express my feelings. And then I saw this singer-songwriter contest ad in the paper. For those of you who don't know what that is anymore, there was there were a series of black and white pages that people used to read. And so I saw that in the paper and I thought, this is kind of neat. I'd been writing songs. I want to test myself. I had no big aspirations for anything. I didn't even know what it was. And so I wrote a song and I literally drew the music myself with a pencil. I didn't even know there were programs. I was such a novice. And I recorded the demo tape in our apartment, and then I dropped it off myself. My parents had no idea what I was doing. I love them, but they're like not the very involved parenting methods, And so I dropped it off, and then I got a call from the broadcasting agency, and they said that my demo tape had made the cut. And so I was supposed to come in for an audition. And I thought, what's an audition? So they basically said, you come in and you sing the song you wrote in front of the judges. And I thought, okay, sure. And so I was in a Korean middle school at the time, so we had uniforms. And I went, with my bag, with my uniform on. I had no idea. I go there and people were dressed up with makeup and everything. I was thinking, where am I and what is this? But, I went there to sing my song. So I sang my song. And what I remember from that day, what was so exciting for me was the band. There was a house band that had learned the song I wrote, and they were backing me. And I'd never experienced that before. Of course not. It was basically one of the first times I ever, it was the first time that a song I wrote was performed in public. So that experience it blew my mind. And I thought, wow, this made everything worth it. I can't believe they're playing my song and I'm singing this in front of people. And I went home and I made the finals. And so that kind of happened for a couple more times. And then I made the final. And for the final, they chose 12 or 10 or 12 teams, solos, and there were some bands. And it was supposed to be this, it was going to be live on national television. So it was, I guess, kind of a big deal. I didn't realize the gravity of it because I was in 8th grade. I was very young. And so what was wonderful about that experience for me was, like I said, I was going through culture shock, it kind of being back in Korea, which was, stricter than the US on so many levels. But I felt like I found my community while preparing for that TV broadcast, because we would meet a couple of times a week, practice together at the studio, all the band members. We became kind of like this family, and I was the youngest one. Everybody else was in high school. So they took really good care of me. They were all like, she's only in 8th grade. We're going to take care of her. We'd go out to eat together. And I really found my family, and I felt very at home for the first time since coming back to Korea. So I went on the show, and it was broadcast live. It was an amazing experience. And then after that show aired, I started getting calls from producers who'd seen the footage and wanted to meet me and my parents because I was a minor. So we had a couple of those meetings, and I remember meeting one producer, and he's a very famous producer in Korea, a very famous composer. His name is Yoon Sang, and he and I met with my mom. And I remembered the thing that stuck out from that meeting was I was such a kid. I was 13, 14 years old. And he treated me like an adult, like basically with so much respect. And the first thing he asked me was, what kind of music do you want to do? And I felt very respected. I remember at that young age feeling like, oh, he really cares what I have to say. He cares what kind of music I love, as opposed to, if you're going to be a pop star, you have to do this and look a certain way. Because there were a lot of conversations about that too, and it made me feel kind of uncomfortable. So I decided to work with him. And I don't think I understood the gravity of that choice at the time. It was just, if you imagine telling a 14-year-old, do you want to record an album? Who would say no? Mm-hmm. I just was like, yeah, of course I do. Of course I would. That's what I've always wanted. I loved music. I loved writing. And so that little tiny event changed the course of my life. And when I look back now, I still think if I hadn't read the paper that day, it sounds so old, right? The paper. But seriously, I was sifting through all the pages, and I just happened to see the advertisement.
So after you've signed on and you have a producer, what does your life look like then as you move forward?
Okay, there's a big caveat here. I think the life of a Korean pop star in today's age is completely different, because at the time I debuted in 98, and that was, Korean pop, K-pop was national. It was local, Right now K-pop is global. So it's a completely different setup. It's so much more pressure. There's a lot more going on. At the time, it didn't feel as daunting. Or I guess I didn't have anything to compare it with, but I was still going to school full time, which was hard because you still have to put in your hours, by law, you still have to go to school. I was going to school, and then as soon as classes were over, this is before I debuted, I would go to the studio, we'd work on music until very late, and I'd come home. So basically, I had very little time to do anything else but school and work. So that that went on for a little over a year. And then once I debuted, it was my high school memories were wonderful, but I remember it being very difficult because I was always so sleep deprived. I was touring. I remember there was a time for a couple months, maybe 3-4 months, I would tour the country. And Korea's not that big, but it's still, significant. And I remember the tour bus would come back to Seoul maybe at 5-6 a.m. And then sometimes I'd go home, wash, and go straight to school. It was just one of those things where I didn't take care of myself. I lost so much weight. I got shingles when I was in high school. And that usually doesn't happen. But I was just so... I was stressed, so sleep deprived. I wasn't taking care of myself the way I should have been, And so that kind of goes to high school was tough because I felt like I had to do all of these things at the same time. And the added pressure of understanding what it was to be famous, what I wanted, but there was, to me, being famous was, people know who I am. And when I sing, they'll know my songs. And it was just this rosy version of it. But there were other aspects to it that I didn't know and that I didn't expect. And I have to say, it was much easier then because the internet wasn't what it is now. Yeah. People weren't snapping pictures and putting them up. That just wasn't there, So I think I had a much easier time, but it was still a challenge and a transition. But then I remember high school was tough because I had to do everything at the same time. But then I went to college, and I remember college being the most glorious time of my life because I chose to be a liberal arts major, as opposed to doing applied music or acting. A lot of young pop stars went that route, but I just felt like I wanted to have a different life outside of it, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. And so I thought going to a very liberal arts college would be better for me. And it was the best decision I ever made. My college friends were my haven throughout the chaos of my career. They were amazing. I loved my classes. I majored in English Lit. And the great thing about being there was you could actually take time off from school, which you couldn't do in high school. So I would go to school, I would go to college for a year, and then take a year off to record and tour and do all of that. And then when I come back to school, I would just be a student again while working, of course, but I was able to have a dual life fully. And I think that made me very happy. So even now, my college years I always say that was the heyday of my life. I hope that's not the heyday. I hope I have more to come.
You haven't peaked.
But I was very happy.
So what brought about the desire for law school?
I think for me, I started so young. I was in 8th grade when this amazing opportunity came my way, and I knew I wanted to do music. I still love it, but I also felt that I needed to give myself one opportunity to see what I could do outside of it too, because I started so young. And I felt that, I was mid-20s at the time. I thought, if I don't try something now, I think it's going to get harder. It's going to get harder, just logistically, but also mentally. I think when you're younger, you're more give it a shot, right? That's kind of how we are. And I felt that I owed it to myself to do something different. And I think also one point that I would like to talk about is, I'd been in the public eye since I was a 9th grader, basically. So I wanted to go to a place where I could be anonymous and see what that felt like again, and to see... Just to be a normal student and give myself the opportunity to be independent.
Not only did Soeun want to be anonymous, but she wanted to fend for herself. She had enough self-awareness to understand that for so much of her life, she had been surrounded by her managers, her agency, her company, and stylists, and she never really had to do things by herself. And this all hit her pretty hard when she went to a bank before starting law school to set up her own bank account.
And they were asking me all these questions. And I realized I speak English, but I have no idea what they're saying. A credit score? What's a credit score? I had nobody to ask, no one to do things for me. I remember feeling, wow, I was really living under a rock. I have no idea how to be independent. And I remember that learning curve to be very steep. But thank God I went through that. I really, really think that I am who I am today because I let myself kind of get out of that path and try something that was completely different in a different country, in a different culture. I'm not going to say it was easy because it was very difficult, but when I look back, I'm really thankful that I gave myself that chance.
It's hard to think of turning away from the life of a celebrity in order to lean into discomfort and vulnerability. But for Soeun, she has been driven by this persistent question in her life.
I keep asking myself, even yesterday, even this morning, is when will I ever get a chance to do this again? Like, I feel like that's this recurring question in my life. And I think I ask myself that to reassure myself and to kind of give myself a pep talk, because I end up doing a lot of new things and trying new things, which can be very daunting. I think it becomes more daunting as you get older because sometimes I think, I'm in my early 40s now. Shouldn't I be building upon the things I've done so I could be like this expert now? But I feel like I am building, but it's always in a new frontier. And so I always feel like a novice.
Mm-hmm.
And in a way, it like you said, it can be vulnerable, it can be scary, but I think weirdly, I get a lot of energy from that. I tell myself, I don't know what I'm doing anymore. But I also feel like if I didn't have that, I wouldn't be as excited.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think I sort of need that for me to feel passionate about something and to feel that kind of drive. But I do ask myself, okay, when will I ever do this again? When will I ever? Because then it becomes this challenge in front of me becomes this amazing opportunity that's not going to come around again. And if it doesn't work out, at least I would have tried it and I would have learned something. And I think that's kind of how I try to think. And I think I did that since I was a kid. I don't know exactly where that came from.
Yeah.
I guess that's why I want to be a little wild. I always like that word. I love that word.
I love that connection of the wild to that taking risks and to leaning into possibilities and reframing possibility, when it feels like a challenge, seeing it as an opportunity.
Yeah.
What Soeun calls wild is a courageous kind of risk-taking.
She gravitates toward what she describes as the novice phase of placing herself squarely in a situation that will force her to make mistakes and accelerate her growth.
She reframes challenges into opportunity. And with that openness and willingness to embrace discomfort, she ultimately reaps more possibility out of her life choices. Today, her work as a studio producer brings all of her past experiences together in a new light. She's working on a new album, which is a Korean book of poems she's setting to music. She's also working on a book project, an audio series, and an animation script.
It's a really interesting amalgamation of everything that I've done in my career, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I love to write. I love music. I actually I love producing. I like making those ideas come to life. And I think having been a lawyer really helps because you have to be organized, right? I was like, yeah, this is why I went to law school, so I could be a producer. It's amazing. I really, really love it.
Of course, as much as Soeun's story can sound like a fairy tale, in reality, she had incredible support systems in place to inspire her to have the courage to try on all these various pathways in her life.
Kudos to my parents because I could see you're a 14-year-old girl in the 90s, late 90s in Korea, especially in the entertainment industry. You don't know what goes on, but they really trusted me. Being trusted by people you care about from a young age gives you a sense of like responsibility, but also like, yeah, if they trust me, I feel like I can do this and stay true to myself. I think that's what I was meaning when I said it helped me stay sane, kind of not being too attached. I feel like a lot of young performers, young actors, child stars, because they're so young and everything kind of becomes very big. But I think having my parents who I knew I could trust to love me no matter what really kept me kind of in line. They didn't really insert themselves into my work at all. They're very laissez-faire. They're like, yeah, do whatever you want. But I knew that they would always be there when I needed them and to be this sense of reason and guidance. So I think that's what kept me on track.
So as you look at your 4-year-old and kind of think about how you'll coach her through her life, right? You are not an indifferent parent like maybe your parents were. And you've had such a strange and beautiful career. What do you think you will share with her in terms of, helping her find her way?
Yeah. Oh, that's such a good question. It is a question that I wish I had an answer for. I sometimes, because, you see your child and I think I see so much of me in her. And it breaks my heart also, in a way, because I'm a highly sensitive person. And I think that's why I was able to feel the things I felt, which is why I was able to create the things that I have. And it helps me in that way. But it's really painful sometimes. Like, I wish I didn't feel so much. And when I see her, she's exactly like me. And I always say, because my husband, he's a sweet, stable guy who, when I talk to him about my feelings, he totally gets me. And then I say, you know what I mean, right? And he's like, I understand you, but I've never felt these emotions. And I always think, why didn't she take after you? It would be such an easier life. Sometimes it breaks my heart that she's not more like him.
Mm-hmm.
But I also think that if there's one thing I really want to do well, and it's something my parents did for me, is I have my moments when I crash, but I get up very quickly. That's one thing I will say about myself that I actually really, in a way, I can say I'm proud of it, is I have like very, very low crashes, but they never last long because I'm able to kind of, the next day, whatever, I'm back, I wish the crash wasn't so severe, and I'm working on that right now. That's my goal for my 40s. But if I could coach her, or if I could be that buffer to, even when you crash, you can come back up because we'll always be there for you. Because that's what my parents and my family did for me, is just knowing that through the crash and when you come back up, we'll always be there. And if she knows that, then hopefully she'll have a easier time. I really try to tell her to focus on the process, even as a 4-year-old. Like, she'll sometimes, she loves art and she'll do things and she'll say, I messed up. And I'm like, no, you didn't, because look at all these colors. Look at all the things you did in the process. And I don't know if that's translating into her little head right now, but I'm hoping it will linger there. And when she's older, the focus on process that I talked about, maybe that'll come come to the surface and take on a life of its own. I really hope that happens, because really I know these are all cliches that people talk about, but in a way they're cliches because they're true. It's really not the result. It's the process. If the process was meaningful and it was life-giving, then yeah, of course the result could have been better, but you lived a good life. That was a really meaningful time. And I want her to take that, hopefully, from watching me.
For Soeun, this idea of a life-giving process is the process itself of starting from a novice-like state and pushing forward to learn and discover more.
Yeah, it's exactly what psychologist Adam Grant talks about in his recent book, Hidden Potential. Full disclosure, Michelle and I love this book. It's been inspiration for us and the podcast. And Grant explains becoming a creature of discomfort can unlock hidden potential in many different types of learning. Summoning the nerve to face discomfort is a character skill, an important form of determination.
Yeah, he says that it takes 3 kinds of courage: to abandon your tried and true methods, to put yourself in the ring before you feel ready, and to make more mistakes than others make attempts. The best way to accelerate growth is to embrace, seek, and amplify discomfort.
Soeun is comfortable in the discomfort. She is fine with putting herself into the ring to make an attempt and even to make a mistake. And our sense as mothers is that her daughter is going to learn a lot more from that kind of modeling than if Soeun were to simply dwell in ease and the quiet of success.
It's so important for our children to see that we make mistakes and can fail. Someone wise once told me this after I stood her up on our first coffee date. She's Dana Walsh.
And she is Michelle Weise.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of A Life Worth Working. If you did, please leave us a 5-star review wherever you listen to podcasts.
And don't forget to subscribe and share with your friends and loved ones who may also be searching for purpose and meaning in their work lives, or what we call the soul of work.